So good afternoon. Yesterday, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary Turco, and I met with Black and Latino Caucus for one of our regularly scheduled meetings. Since we took office, we've been meeting with them pretty much every 90 days or so to just catch up on what's going on and to talk about issues and ideas and opportunities. And over the course of the past 5 years, we've managed to get a lot of really important work done. But obviously, yesterday's meeting carried a little more weight. Together, among other things, we observed 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence in honor of George Floyd. And some of the people who are actually on the WebEx call were also participating at the same time in the remote session that the House of Representatives was having. So on our call, we could actually hear House Speaker Bob DeLeo stop the House session at about the same time that we stopped our meeting to observe the same 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence. I just want to say that we think at times like these, when so many of us are feeling pain and anxiety for a whole bunch of reasons, it was enormously helpful to experience in some small way with a group of colleagues together just how long 8 minutes and 46 seconds was, even if it was something that was being done using remote technology. We have some really great ideas coming out of those discussions, and we hope to have more to say about some specific proposals next week that we believe will dramatically improve transparency in law enforcement. With respect to LabCentral, Johannes, I want to thank you and your team for having us here today. And before I highlight some of the great work these companies are doing, I do want to provide my usual daily update on testing and hospitalizations. At this point, there have been over 600,000 tests conducted throughout Massachusetts, and the positive test rate average is down 80% since the middle of April. And as of yesterday, there were about 1,659 patients who were hospitalized due to COVID-19. That was also down dramatically from mid-April. Across a number of key indices, we've been seeing positive trends for the past several weeks and making the right kind of progress. I think as many people know, 3 weeks ago, we began phase 1 of the 4-phase plan to reopen the state's economy in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, and to do so in a phased, careful, and thoughtful way. And tomorrow, we plan to announce, based on the data, when phase 2 will begin. Frankly, it's been good to see people have an opportunity to get back to work, either remotely or back at the place that they used to call their office. And it's been especially encouraging to see families visit with parents and grandparents at many of our long-term care facilities. We continue to see, as I said, declines in many of those key public health metrics, but I don't think I need to remind everybody that what got us here was our commitment to a set of behaviors and activities, and we have to remain vigilant with respect to all of that. We need to continue to practice the distancing that was so important to stopping the spread, wearing face coverings whenever possible, and especially when appropriate and necessary, maintain the right kind of hygiene and stay home if you're feeling sick. Like most businesses, the companies that work here at LabCentral in this complex have had to change many of their protocols and safety guidelines due to COVID-19. And a quick walk around the building today was a clear indicator of many of the steps that both the companies and LabCentral have taken. And I want to thank you guys for you trying to create a little bit of humor and a light touch to some of the guidance and the advisories that you put forward for your staff and for your tenants. The Lieutenant Governor and I also had a chance to hear how some of the companies have made some pretty significant changes. And I have to say, we've been impressed by how the scientific and research community, which is certainly one of the state's most vibrant industries, have adapted and responded to this crisis. LabCentral, I think as many people know, has served as a launch pad for high potential life science and biotech startups here in Massachusetts since its founding, and has supported over 126 companies. In the last 6 years, LabCentral companies have added 2,400 jobs to the Mass economy. One of the companies we spent some time with today was E25 Bio, a company that works to protect outbreaks around the world and helps control these using unique and affordable testing solutions. Using their viral platform for mobile rapid detection of other viruses, they've begun to manufacture a COVID-2 spike rapid test. Affinivax, the company we were just talking to down the hall, is advancing a next-generation technology platform to enable the development of vaccines and immunotherapies. And Helix Nano has spent the last 2 years developing cancer vaccines, but it's now adapted to take on COVID-19. They're also working to create a vaccine that protects people from coronavirus. LabCentral and the companies that are here have also implemented new protocols for social distancing, hygiene, staffing, operations, and cleaning, and they've done so diligently since day one. They continue to encourage working remotely or from home by giving membership rebates, mandating face coverings, implementing extra cleaning, staggering shifts, and reconfiguring the workplace to promote social distancing. And I think all of us, as we all know, as employers, workers, customers, and community leaders, and just as residents and citizens, have a role to play in fighting COVID-19. LabCentral and their member companies are a great example of how this can be done responsibly. The approach that we've been taking to reopening and ramping up operations is a good example for other companies that are reopening here in Massachusetts. While LabCentral already had effective policies and procedures in place, they're also constantly monitoring the latest updates from our command center and from the CDC and making adjustments accordingly based on what they see here. This is exactly what we need across the state, which is active participation from employers, workers, and the general public. And through mask.gov/reopening, we're providing detailed standards, protocols, and best practices for specific sectors that go beyond the mandatory safety standards required for all businesses and employers. Johannes, I want to thank you for hosting us today and for showing us all how you are supporting and engaging, along with many of your companies here, the fight against COVID-19. I'd now like to turn the podium over to the Lieutenant Governor.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Governor. Before I talk more about LabCentral, and it's great to be back here and together with local Representative Livingstone, I'd like to just provide you an update on more specific guidance we released this week. Today we are announcing guidance for public and semi-public pools for Phase 2 that was released yesterday. We also released safety standards for the operation of all playgrounds and spray decks and campgrounds. This guidance includes social distancing policies, signage, and prohibiting organized activities in the pool. It also includes sanitization guidance in accordance with the CDC, chemical standards guidance, and protocols for lifeguards and water safety. As we head into the summer months, we continue to make good progress in providing recreational spaces and outdoor activities functional and available in response to COVID-19. We are pleased to have made these spaces available for Phase 2, in addition to the beaches and parks that are open to the public and communities across our Commonwealth as temperatures rise and kids spend more time outdoors. For more information and to read the full guidance for these facilities, visit mass.gov/reopening. And now I want to thank all of you here at LabCentral for hosting us today. It really is great to be back. And as we continue in our fight against COVID-19, we appreciate all of your hard work pivoting to this effort. You can see that how passionate you are and how committed all of you are to this mission. Many LabCentral resident and alumni companies have implemented their protocols and pivoted their companies to address COVID-19 across a range of approaches, including new vaccines, therapeutics, detection assays of life-sustaining treatments. And as the Governor mentioned, we had the chance to visit with E25 Bio, Affinivax, and Helix Nano. Each of these companies have answered the call to find a treatment for COVID-19 while also keeping their workforce safe. And as this pandemic has shown, patients and their loved ones await advances for treatment. But the ecosystem we have here in Massachusetts that we're so proud of is capable of supporting research and potentially delivering breakthroughs that further this cause. Indeed, we are rooting for you. This is our mission. This is who we are. As we continue to invest in education, research and development, and workforce training in life sciences and related fields. These people, places, and partnerships have helped usher in a transformative boom of funding and infrastructure that is producing therapies and other products that are transforming patients' lives, not only here, but around the world. I applaud you for your commitment to safety and to helping contribute in such a meaningful way to this pandemic. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Johannes Fruehauf. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and Governor Baker. Thank you for making this a stop in your busy schedules. We really appreciate the attention. I think we know that this is a science challenge that only science can solve, and Boston and Massachusetts and this community around us here is well placed to develop the necessary answers. And I'm glad, I'm happy to say that we are here because of state support. As many of you know, LabCentral was started as a nonprofit with support from the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. We received a grant of $5 million that got us started in 2013, 2014. And then we received a second such grant 2 years later that allowed us to do this expansion up here. With this investment, I think the state set the right stage to enable all of these companies. We currently have 65 different startup companies working here on health problems. Many of them have pivoted to address the COVID crisis. Thankfully, even when the distancing orders came through, the government decided to exempt pharmaceutical R&D. That has allowed us to remain open throughout this ordeal. We already started on March 9th and March 10th to implement our own rules. This was ahead of the state mandates, and to send people home in a strict work from home rule that said only those who have essential lab work to do should come back. And we've seen the community respond very well to that. And then in early April, when the science became very clear that masks protect people, we issued these orange masks to everybody, and you can take a few home. I think we have extra to keep people safe. And then it was nice to see that the CDC and other official bodies adopted the same policy. I think this shows how science can really lead the way. I did want to share with you another fascinating statistic that shows that even in times of crisis, the science continues to go on. And one of our team members, Krista Licata, she does these analytical reports on the economic activity. Some of the numbers the governor already mentioned. We are proud to announce that we've created nearly 2,400 new jobs in Massachusetts since we started. The most amazing number is one that I only learned about this morning when I looked at this, is that since March 10, when we went into lockdown, our companies have continued to do well. They've continued to attract financing, and that is expressed in this number. They raised nearly $500 million in venture capital since March 10 alone. And so that gives you a sense of the importance that the pharmaceutical sector has in our local economy. And so we're very grateful for you all's support, and we hope that we'll be able to pay back that support in helping deliver a solution to this crisis. Thank you.
Good questions for Johannes or us? I do want to say one thing to sort of illustrate several of the points that were made. Nikolai, who's from Helix Nano, we were talking with him about the work that his company is doing on a vaccine, and we were asking how you figure out how far you are along in the process, how likely you are to succeed. How do you measure something like that when you're chasing something that nobody's ever chased before? And he said that part of this is a numbers game. It's about how many people get into the space and how many people chase it and how many people advance the knowledge. And the most important part about this is to have a lot of people engaged in the space and working on pursuing the opportunity and the possibility of a vaccine, because what that does is it creates a big universe of ideas and influencers and information, and over time that may end up getting narrower and narrower, but the bottom line is if you start with this many, the amount of opportunity you have to get to the point where that 5% wins is much less likely than it is if you have a whole bunch of people playing in the space. It's a little bit like, it's a different way of thinking about crowdsourcing, and that's the way a really simple layman like me would take that very big idea you gave us and boil it down. But I think in many ways that's a big part of what you're up to here, and it's certainly a big part of what Massachusetts generally and the companies that are here are up to. We're very proud of that.
The State Police Association has been talking about the loss of its partnership with the UMass Boston Police and with the MBTA Police with respect to the parking of its vehicles, the movement of its troops when they need to address large situations. And raising the question as to whether bending over to political correctness on certain issues or intramural politics for taking precedence over public safety to the detriment of the public good.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is that the Lieutenant Governor and I have been in constant conversation with local community leaders over the course of the past week or so, and our law enforcement folks and their law enforcement folks, as well as a lot of other folks at the local level, have been involved in making sure that people have an opportunity to safely express their point of view over the course of the past week or so. And the overwhelming response we've gotten from those local communities has been an appreciation for the support that we've provided them. And I think that in many ways is a critical element in this. The opportunity for people to get out there and to make their voice heard on a very important issue and to make the point that they want to make about racism and about a variety of other issues here is a paramount First Amendment issue. And there have been some really bad actors who've run under the cover of the folks who are demonstrating and protesting peacefully, and the role that's been played by both local law enforcement and by state law enforcement, and in some cases the National Guard, has been an important part of preserving the safety for those who've been involved. And we're going to continue to support that.
Was there something about the role the state police were playing that the locals weren't happy with? Or
Oh no, the locals have been overwhelmingly positive in their response to what they've gotten from the state police.
Well, why would this partnership break up on seemingly strategic physical placement of assets that would seem to be working for the benefit of everyone?
Well, we'll figure out where it is we need to. We'll figure out whatever it is we need to do to make sure that we can deliver on whatever it has to do with staging and that type of thing. But the overwhelming response we've gotten from the locals has been positive.
Governor, phase 2 is tomorrow. The health data, obviously, as you repeatedly said, will drive the decision. Are the gatherings at all a factor in the decision over the next 24 hours?
Well, as we've said when we've been asked about this, the gatherings themselves obviously create the potential for spread. I think we've all been pleased by the number of people who've been wearing face coverings, who've participated in those events, and they've been outdoors, which is also good, and people for the most part have also been moving, which is also good. But we won't really know the impact of those for at least the next couple of weeks, because as we all know, it takes a couple of weeks to gestate.
Has the decision been made for phase 2 yet? Has the decision been made and we're going to know tomorrow?
We're planning to make that announcement tomorrow.
Governor Cuomo in New York has urged residents there who participated in protests to consider themselves potentially exposed to the coronavirus and urge them to get tests. Are you thinking of doing the same thing?
So our testing protocol, which is part of our submission to the feds for our expanding test program, is going to remain pretty much as it has been, which is symptomatic folks, other folks who've had close contact with people who are symptomatic, healthcare workers, nursing home workers, folks who are working with vulnerable populations themselves. I mean, those are really the places we've been focused and plan to continue to focus. If there's something that comes out of the next few weeks that implies we need to create a different strategy with respect to the public gatherings, we'll pursue that.
Governor, you've probably seen in downtown Crossing and downtown Boston the National Guards deployed. It's sort of shocking that they have these huge weapons strapped around their chests and everything. It's very different from the police presence. Who do they report to? How does that all work? And are they there for show at this point? Or are they ready to fire if need be? What orders do they have?
You know, since we've brought the National Guard in to support local law enforcement, no one's been arrested in Massachusetts. And we take a tremendous amount of pride in that. I think in many ways, local communities who've been looking for support to ensure that their demonstrators and their protesters can do so in a safe way has been a big part of our response. And as I said, both the Lieutenant Governor and I have heard over and over again from city councils, city managers, mayors, selectmen, and others that they really appreciate the support they've gotten from us in ensuring that these events go off safely and peacefully.
But
Last question.
Do they need all this weaponry to make sure that happens?
I think it's pretty much their uniform. I don't think it's an issue one way or another with respect to that. But I do believe that the feedback we've gotten from our colleagues in local government about the support they've gotten from us and what that's meant with respect to their ability to make sure that their communities can have peaceful and safe demonstrations has been overwhelmingly positive.
Thanks, everybody.
Governor, have you had a chance, has the report on Polito been completed? Have you had a chance to look at it if it hasn't?
I haven't, no, I haven't seen the report. It hasn't been completed. I mean, obviously, the Lieutenant Governor and I are as anxious to see it as anybody. But the one thing I would say to everybody about this is we told Mark Perlstein to let us know if there's data or information he needs, and we'll get it for him. And other than that, we told him, and if he needed resources, we would get that for him. And other than that, we told him to finish the job when it's done. I didn't want to give him an artificial deadline. I want him to do the report that he believes will most completely, accurately, thoroughly, and objectively speak to the who, what, why, where, and when with respect to that horrible tragedy. And I said last week that we expected it to be done reasonably soon. We do expect it to be done reasonably soon, but I want Mark and his team to finish it when they think it's done, not because we've given them some artificial deadline.
Thanks,
Governor,
everybody.
one question about the looting last Sunday. It appeared as though there was no effort by police to step in and stop it. And the sense afterwards in talking to a number of people seemed to be that these people who were doing the damage were not connected with the protesters. They were separate from that, and they just went in and used that as a cover. And that these were professional groups, perhaps from out of town, a lot of out-of-state plates. And the effort seemed to be on making sure no one gets hurt. So as long as it's just property damage, it's all insured, let that go. We don't want to get into a confrontation where police may have to use deadly force, and then police are under the gun for what they did under the circumstances. Is that going to continue, and is that basically sending a message to these people who are doing the breaking and entering and the pilfering that they have an open run on the city of Boston to continue to do what they've been doing?
Well, as I said, once we spent some time working with our colleagues in local government to put together a strategy to make sure that these events could happen peacefully in Boston and in dozens and dozens of other communities around the Commonwealth. There have probably been somewhere between 50 and 100 of these at this point. I think there's been one or two arrests done by some local law enforcement folks, but the night you're talking about, I think over 50 people got arrested. And I think for us, small businesses especially, and retailers on Main Street, more so than anybody else, have suffered a terrible blow as a result of this pandemic and a lot of the decisions that we made to slow the spread of the virus. And to add insult to injury by having so many of them be the victims of what happened on Sunday night sent a very significant and important message to all of us about how important it would be for us to make sure that main streets and small businesses and local communities were protected, and that the people who marched and demonstrated, who were doing so, as I've said over and over again, peacefully, would be able to do that without worrying about any violence breaking out. And since then, that's pretty much been the case. And we're going to continue to do all we can that continues to be the case, because that's exactly what I think most people want out of this.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Just curious, are you familiar with this debate at the T about whether T buses should be transporting police and other personnel around? Some people said that the buses shouldn't be doing that. Others are saying they should. Has that risen to your level? Are you weighing in on that?
Well, my understanding is that the Fiscal Management Control Board issued a directive to the T, which I believe the T is going to comply with. And we'll do what we need to do to make sure that the resources get to where they need to go to help communities make sure that tonight, tomorrow night, Sunday night, Monday, wherever it is and wherever it has to be, that we're providing as safe an environment as we possibly can for the people who want to march and demonstrate and the people who want to watch.
Thank you.